The massive alien station hung in space like a silver mountain. Dae-hyun pressed his face against the small window of the human transport ship and stared at the enormous structure. It was 10 times bigger than anything humans had ever built. The station rotated slowly, its surface covered with thousands of lights that blinked in patterns he could not understand. "First time seeing a council station, Ambassador?" asked Soo-jin from the seat beside him. She was young for a diplomatic aide, barely 30, but her mind was sharp as a blade. "First time seeing anything this big," Dae-hyun replied. He had been Earth's top negotiator for 15 years, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. The war between humans and the alien coalition had raged for 3 years. Now the Interstellar Council was finally ready to talk peace. Captain Taemin's voice crackled over the ship's speakers. "Docking in 10 minutes, Ambassador. The aliens are sending an escort." Through the window, Dae-hyun watched 3 sleek alien ships approach. They were beautiful and deadly, their hulls gleaming like polished silver. Each ship was twice the size of the human transport. The message was clear. "We are superior to you in every way." Soo-jin opened her datapad and began reviewing their files. 12 different alien species on the council, she said quietly. The Zephyrians control the meeting. Their speaker is someone called Veltara. Military background, very proud. The reports say she thinks humans are barely evolved animals. What about the others? Grixtel commands the Axiom forces. He's the one who destroyed our colony on New Sol. The others mostly follow their lead. Soo-jin paused. "Dae-hyun, the intelligence reports are not good. They think we're finished. They expect us to beg." Dae-hyun nodded slowly. That was exactly what the aliens expected. 3 years of war had cost humanity dearly. Entire colonies had been evacuated. Earth's cities bore the scars of orbital bombardment. The human fleet had lost 2/3 of its ships, but there were things the aliens did not know. Things that Soo-jin's intelligence reports hinted at but could not fully explain. The war had changed humanity in ways the aliens could not imagine. The docking was smooth and silent. Artificial gravity kicked in as they entered the station. Dae-hyun straightened his simple black diplomatic suit and checked his appearance one last time. Soo-jin gathered her files. Captain Taemin emerged from the cockpit, his military uniform crisp and clean. "Remember," Dae-hyun said to his small team, "we listen, we stay calm. We show no weakness, but we also show no aggression." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Beyond it waited their escort. The alien was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its clothes were rich and ornate, covered in symbols that probably indicated high rank. When it spoke, its voice was melodious but cold. "I am Thekmon, aide to Speaker Veltara. You will follow me to the council chamber. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will show proper respect to your betters." Dae-hyun bit back his first response. Instead, he simply nodded. "We understand." The walk through the station was designed to intimidate. Corridors stretched endlessly in all directions. The ceilings were impossibly high. Holographic displays showed the power and glory of the 12 council species, their ships, their worlds, their vast populations. Everything about the station screamed the same message. "You are small and we are mighty." Other aliens stopped to stare as the human delegation passed. Some looked curious, others showed obvious disgust. A few seemed almost sad, as if they were looking at a doomed species walking to execution. The council chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into shadows above. 12 raised platforms surrounded a small area in the center, where the humans were clearly meant to stand. Each platform held representatives from one of the council species. Speaker Veltara dominated the room from the highest platform. She was humanoid but clearly alien, with golden skin that seemed to glow with inner light. Her eyes were large and completely black. When she looked down at the human delegation, her expression showed nothing but contempt. "So," her voice boomed through the chamber, "the animals from Earth have finally come to beg for mercy." Dae-hyun felt Soo-jin tense beside him, but he remained calm. This was exactly what he had expected. The aliens wanted to humiliate humanity before they dictated their terms. "We have come to hear your proposal," Dae-hyun said simply. A ripple of what might have been laughter ran through the chamber. Several aliens made sounds that were probably mocking. Veltara raised one hand for silence. "Very well. Listen carefully, for these terms are more generous than your pathetic species deserves." She began to speak, and with each word, the true scope of what the aliens demanded became clear. Complete disarmament of all human military forces. Abandonment of 12 colonial worlds. 50 years of tribute payments. Alien overseers on Earth to ensure compliance. Restrictions on human technology and space travel. You will be allowed to exist, Velterra continued, but only under our guidance. Your aggressive nature makes you unfit for self-governance. We will teach you to be civilized. As she spoke, Daehyun noticed something interesting. The alien delegation was not as united as they pretended. Some of the species' representatives looked uncomfortable, others seemed tired, as if this war had cost them more than they wanted to admit. Sujin had been right. The intelligence report suggested the aliens needed this peace as much as humanity did, perhaps more. But they could never admit weakness. They had to maintain the illusion of overwhelming superiority. When Velterra finished speaking, the chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to Daehyun. The moment stretched out like a held breath. "These are your final terms?" Daehyun asked. "They are. I accept them now or face complete destruction. We have been patient with you, but our patience has limits." From another platform, Commander Grixtal spoke. His voice was harsh and mechanical. "Your military is broken. Your colonies are defenseless. Your homeworld bleeds. Accept these generous terms while you still can." Daehyun looked around the chamber one more time. 12 species that controlled much of the known galaxy. Hundreds of worlds. Billions of beings. All of them convinced that humanity would kneel before their might. He thought of Earth, scarred but not broken. He thought of the human colonies that had evacuated but not surrendered. He thought of the shipyards working day and night, the factories retooling for war production, the millions of volunteers joining the military. Most of all, he thought of his grandfather who had told him stories of Korea under occupation. Sometimes his grandfather had said, "You have to fight even when you cannot win. Sometimes dignity matters more than survival." "I need time to consider these terms," Daehyun said finally. The aliens exchanged glances. Velterra's expression showed surprise and irritation. "How much time?" she demanded. 24 hours. "Very well. But understand this, human. These terms will not improve with delay. Accept them tomorrow or face the consequences." As the human delegation was escorted from the chamber, Daehyun could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. In 24 hours he would give an answer that would determine the fate of his entire species. He already knew what that answer would be. The human transport ship felt tiny after the massive council chamber. Daehyun sat in the cramped meeting room with Sujin and Captain Taemin, staring at the data displays that covered every wall. Numbers, charts, and intelligence reports painted a picture that most people would find hopeless. "The official casualty reports," Sujin said, pulling up a holographic display. "We've lost 68% of our fleet. 15 colonies evacuated. Earth's major cities damaged by orbital bombardment." Captain Taemin nodded grimly. "My own ship is one of only 12 heavy cruisers left in the entire human navy. 3 years ago, we had 40. But Sujin was not finished. She touched another control and new data appeared. Her voice dropped to a whisper as if the aliens might somehow be listening. "But look at these numbers, Daehyun. Really look at them." The new display showed alien casualties. The Zephyrian Empire had lost 30% of its military fleet. The Axiom hegemony had suffered even worse losses. 3 of the smaller council species had seen their economies collapse under the strain of constant warfare. "They're bleeding too," Daehyun said quietly. "More than bleeding. The Helian Confederacy hasn't launched a major offensive in 8 months. Intelligence suggests they're almost bankrupt. The Vorlak Union is facing rebellion in their outer colonies because of the war taxes." Captain Taemin leaned forward. "What about their production capacity?" Sujin smiled for the first time in hours. "That's the best part. Their shipyards are running at maximum capacity, but they're building replacement ships for losses. We're building new designs." She brought up technical specifications that made Daehyun's eyes widen. New human ships that were smaller but faster. Weapons that used principles the aliens had never encountered. Defensive systems that could absorb energy attacks and redirect them. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Desperation," Taemin replied simply. "When you're facing extinction, you innovate fast. Our engineers have had 3 years to study captured alien technology. Our factories have been rebuilt from the ground up. Every human settlement is now a military production facility." Daehyun's personal communicator chimed softly. An encrypted message from Earth's High Command appeared on the screen. As he read it, his expression grew more serious. What does it say? Sujin asked. Project Renaissance is ahead of schedule. The new shipyards in the asteroid belt are operational. We're producing ships faster than we're losing them. He paused. For the first time since the war started. The three humans sat in silence for several minutes, absorbing what this meant. The aliens thought humanity was on the edge of collapse. In reality, humanity was just getting started. Meanwhile, in the luxury quarters of the council station, Speaker Veltara met with Commander Grixtal and three other high-ranking aliens. The room was elegant and spacious, filled with art treasures from a dozen worlds. But the mood was anything but relaxed. The humans should have accepted immediately, Veltara said, pacing back and forth. What primitive species needs time to consider such generous terms? Grixtal's mechanical voice carried a note of frustration. Perhaps they are simply too stupid to understand their situation. My intelligence reports confirm their military is shattered. A third alien with green scales and multiple eyes spoke up. This was Korthal from the Saurian Collective. My analysts disagree. The humans have shown remarkable adaptability. Every battle teaches them something new. Adaptability is useless against superior numbers and technology, Veltara snapped. We could destroy their homeworld tomorrow if we chose to. Could we? Korthal asked quietly. Our fleets are spread thin across the galaxy. Our people grow weary of this war. How many more years can we sustain this level of conflict? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. None of them wanted to admit the truth. The war was costing the Council more than they had ever imagined. Back on the human ship, Daehyun was reading reports from Earth that painted a picture the aliens could never understand. Humanity had not just adapted to war, they had embraced it. Every major corporation had converted to military production. Universities had become research centers for weapons development. Children learned engineering and tactics alongside literature and mathematics. The entire human species had become a single organism focused on one goal: survival through victory. Look at this, Sujin said, showing him a video message from Earth. My younger brother, Jae-woo. He's 16 years old and he's designing guidance systems for our new missiles. His high school class built a working plasma cannon last month. Daehyun watched the video of teenage humans working with technology that would have amazed their parents 5 years earlier. The boy looked directly into the camera and spoke with the confidence of someone twice his age. Tell the aliens we're not afraid, Jae-woo said. Tell them we're ready to fight for as long as it takes. We'd rather die free than live as slaves. The message was simple, but it revealed something the aliens had completely missed. This was not just a war between governments or militaries. This was a war between two completely different ways of thinking about existence itself. Captain Taemin received another encrypted transmission from the human fleet. His face grew serious as he read it. Admiral Hai-jin sends her regards, he said. The new battle group is ready, 40 ships using the latest technology. She says to tell you that humanity is no longer fighting to survive. We're fighting to win. Daehyun stood and walked to the small window again. Outside, the massive council station continued its slow rotation. Somewhere in there, 12 alien species were convinced they held all the cards. They thought humanity would beg for mercy and accept whatever scraps they offered. They had no idea what humanity had become during 3 years of total war. Sujin, he said finally, prepare a message for Earth's High Command. Tell them we've heard the alien terms. What's our response? Daehyun thought about his grandfather again. The old man had lived through occupation, war, and reconstruction. He had taught young Daehyun that some things were more important than life itself. Dignity, freedom, the right to exist as equals among the stars. Tell them we reject the terms completely. Tell them we're coming home to prepare for the next phase of the war. Sujin and Taemin exchanged glances. They had both hoped for peace, but they understood. Sometimes peace was not possible. Sometimes you had to fight until you won or until there was nothing left to fight for. Do you really think we can win? Sujin asked. Daehyun smiled grimly. Sujin, the aliens think they're fighting the same species that stumbled into space 50 years ago. They have no idea what humanity has become. Tomorrow they're going to find out. The decision was made. In less than 24 hours, Daehyun would give the Council an answer that would shock the galaxy and change the course of interstellar history forever. 24 hours passed like a held breath across the galaxy. News networks from 100 worlds carried reports about the human delegation and the Council's peace terms. Most commentators predicted humanity would accept any offer that avoided complete extinction. After all, what choice did they have? Dae-hyun slept poorly that final night. He dreamed of Earth's burning cities and empty colonies. But he also dreamed of something else. Human children learning to build weapons, human engineers working 18-hour days, human soldiers who fought like they had nothing left to lose. Because in many ways they didn't. When morning came, Soo-jin found him staring out at the stars. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "No," he replied honestly, but readiness was never the point. The walk back to the council chamber felt different this time. Alien beings still stared at the human delegation, but now their expressions showed more curiosity than contempt. Word had spread that the humans had not immediately accepted the peace terms. This was unusual. Most species begged for mercy within hours. The chamber itself was even more impressive the second time. All 12 council species had sent their most important representatives. Dozens of journalists from across the galaxy watched from elevated platforms. This meeting would be broadcast live to billions of beings on hundreds of worlds. Speaker Veltara looked down at the humans with barely concealed irritation. She had expected them to return with grateful acceptance, and perhaps a few minor requests for clarification. Instead, the human ambassador stood calmly in the center of the chamber, showing no signs of fear or desperation. "Well, human," she said, her golden skin seeming to glow brighter with annoyance. "Have you come to accept our generous offer?" Dae-hyun looked around the chamber slowly, meeting the eyes of representatives from each species. When he finally spoke, his voice was clear and steady, carrying easily through the vast space. "Honored members of the Interstellar Council," he began, "we have carefully considered your proposal. We recognize your military superiority, your technological advantages, and your control of most known space. We acknowledge that you have the power to destroy every human world if you choose to do so." Murmurs of approval rippled through the alien delegation. This sounded like the beginning of a proper surrender. "We thank you for offering to allow our species to continue existing under your guidance and protection. Many civilizations would consider your terms generous, especially for a species that has caused you such trouble over the past 3 years. Veltara nodded approvingly. The human was finally showing proper respect for his betters. Dae-hyun paused, looking once more around the chamber. When he continued, his words would be remembered for centuries. "However, after careful deliberation, humanity respectfully declines your offer." The chamber fell into complete silence. For several heartbeats, no one moved or spoke. Then the silence exploded into chaos. "What?" Veltara's voice cracked like a whip. "What did you say?" "We decline your terms," Dae-hyun repeated calmly. "All of them. We will not disarm our military. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not pay tribute. We will not accept alien oversight of human affairs." Commander Grixtal's mechanical voice cut through the noise. "You cannot be serious. You face certain destruction." "Perhaps," Dae-hyun replied, "but we have decided that some things are more important than survival. Freedom is one of them. Dignity is another. The right to exist as equals among the stars is a third." The chamber erupted again. Some aliens shouted in anger. Others seemed stunned by what they were hearing. A few appeared almost impressed by the humans' boldness. Veltara raised her hands for silence. When the noise died down, her voice was deadly cold. "You are choosing extinction over peace. Your entire species will die because of your pride." "Our entire species chose this path together," Dae-hyun said. "We held a vote. Every human settlement, every ship, every outpost. The results were overwhelming. We prefer to fight as free beings rather than live as slaves." This was not entirely true. There had been no formal vote. But the spirit of his words was accurate. Humanity had made its choice through actions rather than ballots. Every person who volunteered for military service, every engineer who worked extra shifts, every child who learned to build weapons instead of toys. The vote had been taken in 1,000 small decisions made by billions of individual humans. Korthal from the Saurian Collective leaned forward. "What do you hope to achieve? You cannot defeat 12 species." "Maybe not," Dae-hyun admitted, "but we can make you remember us. Every human ship you destroy will cost you 3 of your own. Every human world you conquer will require a permanent occupation force. Every year this war continues will drain your resources and weaken your empires." Soo-jin stepped forward slightly. She had not been scheduled to speak, but Dae-hyun nodded his permission. You think this war has been expensive so far? She asked. You have seen nothing yet. Humanity has spent 3 years learning to fight you. We have studied your tactics, reverse-engineered your technology, and adapted our entire civilization for war. What you have faced until now was just humanity figuring out how to survive. Now we are ready to fight. Her words sent a chill through the chamber. Several alien representatives began speaking urgently among themselves in their native languages. Veltara slammed her hand down on her podium. This is madness. We offer you life and you choose death. We choose freedom, Daehyun corrected. If death comes with it, then so be it. But we will not kneel. We will not beg. We will not accept that any species has the right to rule over another. He turned toward Sujin and Captain Taemin. We have delivered our message. There is nothing more to say here. The 3 humans began walking toward the chamber's exit. Behind them, the noise rose to a crescendo. Aliens shouted questions, demands, and threats. But the humans did not look back. Wait! Veltara's voice echoed through the chamber. You cannot simply leave. We are not finished. Daehyun paused at the doorway and turned back one final time. Yes, we are finished. This war will continue until one side can no longer fight. We have made our choice. Now you must make yours. As they walked through the station corridors, Sujin whispered, The whole galaxy is watching this broadcast. Everyone will know what humanity chose. Good, Daehyun replied. Let them know that some species cannot be conquered. Let them know that freedom is worth fighting for no matter the cost. Captain Taemin's ship was waiting at the docking port. Within minutes, they were away from the station and heading back toward human space. Behind them, the council chamber remained in chaos as 12 alien species tried to understand what had just happened. None of them had ever encountered a species that would choose certain destruction over submission. They had no idea how to respond to enemies who fought not for conquest or resources, but for the simple right to exist as free beings. The human delegation's walk away from the council chamber would become one of the most famous moments in galactic history. It was the moment when a small primitive species looked into the face of overwhelming power and said, No, the real war was about to begin. 6 months after the failed peace negotiations, the galaxy was a different place. What the council had expected to be a quick punishment of rebellious humans had become a grinding war that consumed resources and lives at an alarming rate. Sujin stood on the bridge of the human battleship New Seoul, watching enemy ships burn in the distance. She was no longer a diplomatic aide. The war had changed everyone's role. Now she served as a strategic analyst, helping human commanders understand alien tactics and weaknesses. Status report, called Admiral Hyejin from the command chair. She was young for such a high rank, barely 40, but the war had promoted capable people fast. The human fleet could not afford to waste talent on outdated hierarchies. Enemy formation is breaking apart, reported Captain Jae-sung from the weapons station. Their flagship is requesting permission to retreat. Admiral Hyejin smiled grimly. Permission denied. Signal all ships, no survivors, no prisoners. Make them remember this day. Sujin watched the battle unfold with professional interest. The alien ships were still superior in raw firepower, but human tactics had evolved beyond recognition. Instead of trying to match the aliens ship for ship, humans fought like a pack of wolves. Fast, coordinated, unpredictable. The enemy flagship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Around it, smaller alien vessels scattered like frightened fish. Within minutes, the entire enemy fleet was either destroyed or fleeing toward the edge of the system. Minimal casualties on our side, Jae-sung reported. 3 ships damaged, none destroyed. Excellent, Admiral Hyejin said. Signal Earth Command. The Kepler system is now under human control. This was the new reality. Human forces were no longer just defending their colonies. They were expanding, taking systems that had been under alien control for centuries. The war that was supposed to end in human extinction had become a human conquest. On the other side of the galaxy, the mood in council chambers was very different. Speaker Veltara sat in emergency session with the remaining council members. 3 species had already sued for separate peace with humanity. Others were demanding answers about why the war was going so badly. How is this possible? Demanded Grixtel, his mechanical voice full of frustration. 6 months ago, the humans were a broken species begging for mercy. They were never begging, said Korthal quietly. He had become the voice of reason in the increasingly desperate council meetings. We misunderstood everything about them from the beginning. Veltara's golden skin seemed to have lost its glow. The stress of the war was visible in her posture and expression. Our intelligence reports were clear. Human military capacity was at 20% of pre-war levels. Our intelligence was wrong, Korthal replied. The humans were not weakening during the early war years. They were learning. Every battle taught them something new. Every defeat made them stronger. He activated a holographic display that showed human ship designs from the beginning of the war compared to current vessels. The difference was dramatic. Early human ships were crude copies of alien technology. Current human ships were entirely new designs, sleek and deadly and unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Look at this, Korthal continued. Human weapon systems now use principles we do not understand. Their ships are smaller but faster than ours. Their tactics are completely unpredictable because they do not follow any known military doctrine. Another council member, Thekvar of the Crystal Collective, spoke up. My worlds are in open rebellion. The population refuses to support a war that has already consumed half our fleet and produced no victories. The Axiom hegemony has lost control of 17 colony systems. Grixtel admitted reluctantly. Human expansion fleets have occupied them and are using the populations as willing allies against us. This was perhaps the most shocking development of all. Everywhere human forces went, they were welcomed by alien populations who had grown tired of council rule. The humans offered something the council never had, a chance for local self-government and voluntary cooperation instead of forced submission. Veltara slammed her fist on the table. We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. We brought order from chaos. We civilized primitive worlds. We conquered them, Korthal corrected. The humans are offering them something we never did, a choice. Meanwhile, on Earth, the transformation of human civilization was complete. Every major city had become a fortress. Every factory produced weapons or ships or supplies for the war effort. Every school taught military tactics alongside traditional subjects. Young Jae-woo, Sujin's brother, was now 18 and served as a junior engineer on a human battlecruiser. The shy teenager from the video message had become a confident young man who could design weapons systems that baffled alien scientists. The new plasma cannons are ready for testing. He reported to his commanding officer. Our calculations suggest they will be 30% more effective than current alien designs. His commander, Captain Min-ho, nodded approvingly. Outstanding work. How did you solve the power distribution problem? I studied alien energy systems and found their weakness, Jae-woo replied. They rely too much on brute force. Our design uses controlled resonance to amplify the effect. This conversation was taking place on hundreds of human ships across the galaxy. A generation of humans had grown up during wartime, learning to innovate and adapt at a pace that amazed even their own leaders. What had taken alien civilizations centuries to develop, humans were improving upon in months. The war had revealed something fundamental about human nature that the aliens had completely missed. Humans did not just fight for survival, they fought for the right to exist as equals, to grow and change and improve without artificial limits imposed by self-appointed superiors. Back in council space, the economic effects of the war were becoming impossible to ignore. The Helian Confederacy had defaulted on its war bonds. The Zephyrian Empire faced food riots on its core worlds. Military spending had consumed resources that should have gone to maintaining the infrastructure of galactic civilization. We cannot sustain this level of conflict much longer, admitted Thekvar. My people are demanding that I negotiate with the humans directly. Absolutely not, Veltara snapped. We do not negotiate with primitives. They are not primitives anymore, Korthal said sadly. Perhaps they never were. Perhaps we simply told ourselves they were primitives because it made conquest easier to justify. The truth was becoming clear to anyone willing to see it. The Council had not been fighting a primitive species struggling to survive. They had been fighting a highly adaptable civilization that viewed the war as an opportunity to prove they belonged among the stars as equals, not subjects. Commander Grixtal received an urgent communication from his home fleet. After reading it, his mechanical features somehow managed to convey despair. The humans have taken the Procyon system, he announced. My home fleet no longer exists. The chamber fell silent. Procyon was deep in council space, far from any human colony. If humans could project force that far from their home territories, Nowhere was truly safe. Veltara's hand shook as she realized what this meant. The war was not just going badly. The war was lost. The only question now was how much of the Council would survive the human advance. "Contact Earth," she said quietly.
Tell them.
"Tell them we wish to discuss new terms." "And if they refuse?" asked Korthal. Veltara closed her eyes. "Then we prepare to discover what it means to be conquered by a species that remembers what freedom costs." 2 years had passed since the humans walked away from the Council's peace offer. The galaxy that emerged from those years bore no resemblance to the one that had existed before. The old order was crumbling, and something entirely new was taking its place. Captain Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of his flagship, the battleship Incheon, and watched the Zephyrian home fleet burn. He had been a junior officer under Captain Taemin when the war began. Now he commanded the largest human battle group ever assembled. 200 ships of the newest designs, crewed by humans who had known nothing but war their entire adult lives. "Enemy flagship is requesting permission to surrender," reported his communications officer. Ji-hoon considered the request. The Zephyrian home fleet had been one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Now it was wreckage floating in space around the golden world that had once been the heart of an empire. "Tell them they can surrender to the planetary government," he replied. "We do not negotiate with military forces. We negotiate with the people they claim to represent." This was the new human doctrine. They did not accept the surrender of governments or military leaders. They went directly to the populations of conquered worlds and asked a simple question: "Do you want to be free?" The answer was always yes. On the planet below, millions of Zephyrians watched human ships in orbit and waited for bombardment, occupation, or worse. Instead, they received a broadcast message from Captain Ji-hoon himself. "People of Zephyra," his voice carried across the planet, "you are now free. Your government has been dissolved. Your military has surrendered. You may choose your own leaders, write your own laws, and decide your own future. The only requirement is that you respect the freedom of others as we respect yours." The message was simple, but it represented a revolution in how galactic politics worked. For centuries, conquest had meant replacing one ruler with another. Humans offered something different: the chance for self-determination. In the ruins of the council chamber where this war had begun, Speaker Veltara sat alone. Most of the other council members had fled or been captured or had negotiated separate surrenders. The great alliance that had once ruled most of the galaxy had collapsed completely. Her personal communicator chimed softly. A message appeared on the screen, sent through diplomatic channels that somehow still functioned despite the chaos. The message was from Earth, Speaker Veltara. "We understand you wish to discuss surrender terms. We are prepared to listen. Please meet us at the neutral station in the Vega system. Come alone with no guards or weapons. Ambassador Dae-hyun will represent humanity." Veltara read the message 3 times before its meaning fully sank in. The humans were offering to negotiate her surrender. After everything that had happened, they were still willing to talk rather than simply destroy what remained of council space. She thought about refusing. Her pride demanded that she fight to the end rather than submit to primitive animals who should have been grateful for any mercy at all. But pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. Her people needed her to swallow that pride and try to save what could be saved. The journey to the Vega station took 3 days. Veltara traveled in a simple courier ship, escorted by human vessels that could have destroyed her at any moment, but instead flew alongside her with almost ceremonial respect. The station itself was a human construction, built in the years since the war began. It was nothing like the Grand Council stations with their soaring architecture designed to intimidate. This station was functional, efficient, and somehow welcoming, despite its obvious military purpose. Ambassador Dae-hyun met her at the airlock personally. He looked older than she remembered, his hair now completely gray, his face lined with the stress of years spent managing a galactic war. But his eyes were as calm and determined as they had been that day he walked out of the council chamber. "Speaker Veltara," he said with a slight bow. "Thank you for coming." She followed him through corridors that bustled with activity. Humans in military uniforms worked alongside aliens of species she recognized, former council subjects who had joined the human cause. The sight was deeply disturbing to someone who had spent her life believing in the natural order of galactic hierarchy. The meeting room was simple and small, with a table and 2 chairs. No elevated platforms, no ceremonial decorations, no symbols of power or authority. Just 2 beings sitting across from each other, equal in the most basic sense. "I have come to discuss surrender terms," Veltara said formally. "I assumed as much," Daehyun replied. "What do you propose?" The question caught her off guard. She had expected him to dictate terms, not ask for her suggestions. What do you mean? What kind of future do you want for your people?" Daehyun asked patiently. "The war is over. Your empire is gone. Your fleets are destroyed. But your people are still alive and they deserve a chance to build something new." Veltara struggled to understand this approach. In her experience, conquered peoples accepted whatever terms their conquerors offered. They did not get to participate in designing their own fate. "My people have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years," she said finally. "We brought order from chaos. We united hundreds of species under one law. You conquered hundreds of species and imposed your will on them," Daehyun corrected gently. "There is a difference." "And what would you do differently?" Daehyun activated a holographic display that showed the current state of former council space. Dozens of worlds were now self-governing, allied with humanity but not ruled by it. Trade flowed freely between systems that had once been forced to send tribute to distant capitals. "We offer partnership instead of domination," he explained. "Your people can join this new confederation as equals. You can elect your own leaders, make your own laws, control your own resources. The only requirement is that you respect the same rights for others. And if we refuse, then you are free to go your own way, as long as you do not try to conquer others again." Veltara stared at the display for a long time. Everything she had believed about governance, about the natural order of strong ruling weak, was being turned upside down. "This will not work," she said finally. "Without strong central authority, there will be chaos. Worlds will fight each other. Trade will collapse. Civilization itself will crumble." "Perhaps," Daehyun acknowledged. "Or perhaps civilizations are stronger when they choose cooperation instead of having it forced upon them. We will find out together." On Earth, the transformation of human society continued at a rapid pace. The planet that had once struggled to defend itself was now the center of a growing interstellar confederation. But the changes went deeper than military might or political influence. Young Jaewoo, now a senior engineer, worked with alien scientists who had once been enemies. Together, they developed technologies that neither species could have created alone. The combination of human adaptability and alien knowledge was producing innovations at an unprecedented rate. "The new drive system is ready for testing," he reported to Admiral Hai-Jin, who now served as the military coordinator for the Confederation. "Our joint teams estimate it will reduce travel time between systems by 60%. "Excellent work," she replied. "How many species contributed to the design?" 7 different engineering teams. The breakthrough came when the Helian mathematicians worked with our quantum physicists. Neither group could have solved it alone. This was the new model of progress: voluntary cooperation between equals rather than forced tribute from subjects. The results spoke for themselves. In 2 years, the Human Confederation had achieved technological advances that the old council had not managed in decades. Meanwhile, in what had once been the heart of council space, former subjects were making their own choices about the future. Some joined the Human Confederation immediately. Others chose independence. A few tried to reconstruct smaller versions of the old empire. But without the military might to enforce obedience, these attempts usually collapsed within months. The Saurian Collective, led by the pragmatic Korthal, became one of humanity's strongest allies. Their ancient wisdom combined with human innovation created a partnership that benefited both species. "Your people have taught us something important," Korthal told Daehyun during one of their regular diplomatic meetings. "Freedom is not something you give to others. It is something you recognize that they already possess." Back at the Vega station, Speaker Veltara was struggling with the hardest decision of her life. Everything in her background and training told her that accepting human terms would be a betrayal of everything the Zephyrian Empire had stood for. But she could not ignore the reports from her remaining colonies. Worlds that had accepted human partnership were thriving. Their populations were healthier, wealthier, and happier than they had been under council rule. Meanwhile, the few systems that tried to maintain the old ways were collapsing into chaos and poverty. Why? she asked Daehyun finally. Why do you offer partnership to people who tried to destroy you? Daehyun was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because we learned something during this war. Ruling over others does not make you strong. It makes you weak, because you waste energy forcing others to obey instead of inspiring them to cooperate. And you believe cooperation is stronger than domination? I know it is. Your empire lasted 1,000. 5 years had passed since the day Daehyun walked away from the Council's peace negotiations. The galaxy that emerged from those years would have been unrecognizable to anyone who remembered the old order. Daehyun stood in his office on Earth, now serving as the first Secretary General of the Terran Commonwealth. Through his window, he could see the rebuilt skyline of New Seoul, where human and alien architects had worked together to create something beautiful and entirely new. His hair was now completely white, and his face showed the lines of someone who had carried the weight of history-changing decisions. But his eyes remained as determined as ever, focused now on the harder task of building peace instead of winning war. Soo-jin entered his office carrying the daily briefing. She had become his chief advisor, helping to coordinate policies across dozens of worlds and species. The Zephyrian referendum results are in, she announced with a smile. And 87% voted to remain in the Commonwealth. Veltara's recommendation carried significant weight with her people. Daehyun nodded with satisfaction. The former speaker had become one of the Commonwealth's most effective advocates, traveling from world to world to explain how voluntary cooperation could achieve what forced submission never could. What about the Axiom territories? He asked. More complicated. Grixtel's old military districts are split. Half want full Commonwealth membership, a quarter prefer associate status, and the remainder want complete independence. And we will respect whatever they choose, Daehyun said firmly. This was the core principle that made the Commonwealth different from every previous galactic government. The right of self-determination was absolute and non-negotiable. Meanwhile, on the former council world of Kepler 442b, young Jae-woo worked in a laboratory that would have been impossible to imagine a decade earlier. Human engineers collaborated with alien scientists from 7 different species, sharing knowledge that had once been jealously guarded state secrets. The new terraforming technology is ready for field trials, he reported to his mixed species team. The combination of Helian atmospheric processors and human bioengineering should reduce planetary transformation time from centuries to decades. His research partner, a Saurian physicist named Velkoth, examined the data with approval. Outstanding work. My people have struggled with atmospheric chemistry for generations. Your species' approach to biological solutions is fascinating. That is what makes this partnership so effective, added Dr. Yeon Seo, the human team leader. Every species sees problems from a different angle. Together we find solutions none of us could discover alone. This scene was repeated on hundreds of worlds across the Commonwealth. The free exchange of ideas and techniques was producing technological advances at an unprecedented pace. Diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia were being cured. Energy production was becoming cleaner and more efficient. Space travel was becoming faster and safer. On the world of New Zephyra, Veltara addressed her people's planetary assembly. The once proud speaker now served as an elected representative, chosen by the same people she had once ruled by divine right. The quarterly trade reports show continued growth, she announced to the assembled delegates. Our partnership with the Commonwealth has brought prosperity beyond anything we achieved during the Empire years. One of the younger delegates, a Zephyrian who had grown up during the war years, raised her hand. Honored Veltara, do you ever regret the fall of the Empire? Veltara considered the question carefully. I regret the suffering caused by the war. I regret that it took defeat to teach us the difference between ruling and leading. But I do not regret the outcome. Our people are healthier, wealthier, and happier than they have been in centuries. And you truly believe this Commonwealth will last? I believe it will last as long as its member species choose to make it work, Veltara replied. That is both its strength and its weakness. It depends on constant choice rather than enforced obedience. In the Outer Rim territories, Admiral Ji-hoon commanded the Commonwealth Defense Fleet. His ships patrolled the borders not as conquerors, but as protectors of the voluntary alliance that had grown from humanity's refusal to surrender. His flagship, now called the Liberation, monitored a disputed system where two minor species were arguing over mining rights. Instead of imposing a solution by force, Ji-hoon's role was to facilitate negotiations and ensure that neither side resorted to violence. Status report. He called to his bridge crew, which included humans, saurians, reformed Zephyrians, and representatives from half a dozen other species. Both sides have agreed to mediation, reported Commander Hai Young, his human second-in-command. They want Commonwealth arbitrators to help resolve the dispute. Excellent. Signal the diplomatic corps. This is exactly the kind of success we hoped for. The contrast with the old system could not have been more dramatic. Under council rule, mining disputes were resolved by whoever had the most military force. Under the Commonwealth, disputes were resolved through negotiation, compromise, and mutual respect. Not everything was perfect. Some worlds struggled with the transition to self-governance. A few species tried to recreate smaller versions of the old imperial system, only to discover that their neighbors would no longer tolerate aggression. The Vorlak Union, one of the few remaining autocratic states, posed a constant challenge. Their leaders refused Commonwealth membership and continued to threaten their neighbors. But they were isolated and weak, their threats ignored by populations that had seen what freedom could accomplish. Back on Earth, Daehyun prepared for his weekly address to the Commonwealth Assembly. Representatives from 43 species would listen as he outlined policies and proposals for consideration. But unlike the old council chambers, this assembly was not a place where superior species dictated terms to inferior ones. It was a forum where equals debated and decided their common future. The proposal for joint exploration of the Andromeda approach routes has been approved, he announced to the assembly. 17 species have volunteered ships and crews for the mission. This will be the largest cooperative exploration effort in galactic history. The announcement was met with enthusiastic approval from representatives of species that had once been bitter enemies. The prospect of exploring unknown space together had united them in ways that forced cooperation never could. After the session, Daehyun met privately with Korthal, who had become one of his closest advisors. The old Saurian had adapted to the new order better than most, his natural wisdom finding fertile ground in a system based on voluntary cooperation. "Do you think we have truly changed the galaxy?" Daehyun asked his friend. "We have shown the galaxy that change is possible," Korthal replied thoughtfully. "Whether that change becomes permanent depends on choices that have not yet been made." "And humanity? Do you think we will resist the temptation to become what we once fought against?" Korthal's multiple eyes blinked in what passed for a smile among his species. "That is the right question to ask. The moment you stop asking it will be the moment you begin to fail." As the years passed, the Commonwealth continued to grow and evolve. New species petitioned for membership. Others chose to remain independent but maintained friendly relations. A few tried to resist the tide of change, but they found themselves increasingly isolated in a galaxy that had learned the value of freedom. The war that began with humanity's refusal to kneel had ended with the galaxy's decision to stand together as equals, not through conquest or force, but through the simple recognition that voluntary cooperation was stronger than compelled obedience. Daehyun often returned to that moment in the council chamber when he made the choice that changed everything. Walking away from those negotiations had not been about starting a war. It had been about refusing to accept that any being had the right to rule over another without consent. The galaxy had learned that some species could not be conquered because they would rather die free than live as slaves. But more importantly, it had learned that freedom was not something to be hoarded by the strong. It was something to be shared with all who were willing to accept its responsibilities along with its rewards. The Interstellar Council's greatest error had not been underestimating human military capability. It had been failing to understand that once people tasted genuine freedom, they would never willingly give it up again. And in the end, that lesson had freed not just humanity, but the entire galaxy.